Most rent-to-rent operators lose deals before they've even pitched. Not because their offer was bad, but because they talk too soon. So in this video, I want to show you our proven formula that turns awkward viewings into confident closes. A really key principle of what I'm about to show you and what this video is all about is we're not here to pitch and pray. And if you've seen any of the other content on this channel, you'll notice that consultative selling is the approach we like to take. So what I'd like to do initially is break down the process so that we can segment it later on in the video and you understand the journey that we're on. So first of all, this is all about handling objections and closing deals. So if we're going to break that down as a process, this will take place mostly with regards to a viewing and a meeting with a landlord or an agent, and finally the exchanging and signing of contracts. So if we're going to do my little ladder, starting at the bottom of the ladder, really simple. Confidence. There will be an element of you needing to bring confidence in your knowledge of the business model and how you can solve a landlord problem should they need that to be the case. Approach conversation with confidence, lead the landlord and agent to the solution you're going to provide. So leading those conversations with confidence, absolutely key. Next thing you're going to do in that process that we're going to deep dive into is uncover the motivations of the prospect, in the case the landlord or the agent. And I say motivations and not problems here, although you could describe them both equally. John might not have a problem specifically, but he might rather be playing golf twice a week rather than once, and I might be able to help solve the problem so he can do that. So that's what I mean. Next up, in the process of you consulting on the scenario here, you're going to be able to solve problems. I've described what we do here as property problem solving so often. I fundamentally believe that's what drives success in this business model, and being creative with your solutions is absolutely key. So we're here to solve problems, and in doing so, we're going to be a little bit clever with how we approach some of the things we say along the way. So I'm just going to call this psychology. There are some ways that we lead prospects to the problems that we're going to solve and how we can make it a win-win. I'm going to show you some of those strategies. You get that right, guys? Fundamentally, the deal will be yours. So now I broke it down, let's do a bit of a deep dive. As we zoom in on the process, I want you to remember what your job is in this scenario, and it will very likely be part of a viewing, but we're talking about deal closing and objection handling in its entirety. So let's just say that this is your job. Carefully, you're going to approach your discovery. Really key. We do this by asking questions, and I'll show you a bit more about how you can go deeper on those types of questions later in the video. But you've got to start somewhere. Now, as you might already know, emotion plays a big part in rapport building, the connections you build with people, but also them understanding your model and what you bring to the table. So when I put emotion here, I mean, I want the prospect to be able to put context into my offer, and I need to understand that really clearly. So emotion is going to play a big part in this, and I'll build on these as we go. Although emotion is a fundamental part initially, you're going to have to present your solution logically. Get this wrong and they won't be able to put the emotion bit to the problem solve. And again, there's a context explanation piece here. And then finally, really importantly, the close. So as I just quickly deep dive on these bits individually, for the discovery, it is just about asking good quality questions. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. That emotion section, really cool, but I want them to feel it. feel the value, the solution I'm going to bring. And I'll explain that with some good context and my logic. But even this word here, how does that feel, is a different way of asking a really important question than saying, what do you think? Thinking and feeling very different. Think, logic, feel, emotion. Consider that as part of the psychology element here as well. Logic, love it. Property, problem solving. You're going to need to explain yourself well here. Can you meet the requirements of that landlord or agent situation? And can you present your solve in a way they understand? And other videos on this channel explain how you want that communication to be as effective as possible. We don't want jargon. We want you to understand the model so clearly that you could text it to your mate, like that sort of shorthand. If you can do that, you'll be able to hit the mark here. And finally, we want to close, of course. And we mentioned it in the breakdown earlier that this is going to be very much about handling objections. Perfect. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on these bubbles as we move through. But remember, this is your job. Keep your eye on the prize. Let's move on. We've got the process. You know your job. And one of the parts I just described was about leading the conversation. So to lead, couple goals of being able to do this. Number one, I mentioned it already. Key life skill, right? Build rapport, and I explain why in the process this is important, because you won't be able to access points 2 and 3 if you don't. So building rapport leads really nicely into your ability to ask open questions. So fundamental, because I don't want to just ask a question like, were the previous tenants all right? Well, that's a yes/no answer. And it might tee up something later that could be useful for me, but better would be to ask more questions that are framed around, what's the situation with the management right now? It's not a yes/no question, is it? Difference between open and closed questions, really key. And it's interesting that when we're under pressure, we default to closed questions, yes/no answer questions. Really good to rehearse this stuff. It's in our viewing Bible to help remind mentees about these hows and whats. You know, how did things finish with the previous tenants? Really good. Keep the open questions coming. And by doing so, you get access to this third part. And you notice how we're going a couple of layers deeper here, because I call this one pull the thread, because I'll give you exact examples of this in a second. But if you do a great job active listening, part of the viewing, asking great questions and picking up on those golden nuggets along the way, it'll enable you to go deeper on those questions. But importantly, and that's why I'm going to put it here, don't forget to pause. Sounds so simple, right? And it can feel really awkward. But it's in those pauses that sometimes feel so uncomfortable that it's embarrassing, actually. But it's in those gaps that landlords often overshare. And we need to remember not to be oversharing ourselves. So don't forget, between questions, I like a pause. I said I'd go into a bit more detail regarding questioning in particular. Remember, this is all part of the discovery process from the introductory model. I call this we love a ladder over here. So we're going to go down the ladder this time. First thing you're going to be able to start to do with this pulling the thread I just mentioned is surface level questions. And it might be something on the lines of, What was it about the previous tenants that you wish wasn't the case? Notice I did a what? Nice open question. And they might say, oh, well, I wish they hadn't left the property in the state when they moved out. Perfectly reasonable thing to say. In which case, I want to assess the impact that had. If that wasn't ideal, and I teed up that question nicely, didn't I? I want to know what impact that has on the landlord situation. Oh, really, John? Remember, the landlord's always called John in my mind. Really, John, and what was the consequence of that? Or so what happened on the back of that? That's an impact question, and I'll break down why these are important in a second, don't worry. And you can go one layer deeper. Lots of ways to frame this, but really simply, once I know that the impact was that it cost the landlord money, deep clean between tenants, that's what often happens, at least in my experience, I might go one layer deeper and try to attach this to an emotional feeling. So, how did that make you feel, John? It's a powerful question. Remember, think, logic, feel, emotion. So if you're still with me, this is all about facts. Surface level stuff, but remember, you're collecting information, active listening. I'm building up a repertoire. I'm loading my gun with the ammo I'm going to use for my pitch later, because as you'll discover in a bit, there's no point doing pitch and pray. This impact stuff is more about consequences. What happened on the back of that, John? Well, it cost me money. Great, I need to know that. And then emotion, I already said it. And reminding the landlord in this case of those feelings that they had to pay out significantly to fix the property. And for a landlord who on average in this country right now is making probably £2,000 a year net on a property mortgaged, the feeling of having to pay out for a number of broken things that crush that profit into it being not even really a viable business model, that's painful. And that's going to help me progress into a place where I can probably solve a problem. So start with the surface level questions, go a little deeper, we pull the thread, and then I want to get to a place where I can put some context into it as well. As you probably already know, somewhere between the emotion and the logic part of the first process I took you through, there's going to need to be a pitch of some sort. And you've asked great questions, and I'll show you how that factors in here. So we're going to have to frame the pitch. Super simple. The landlord, I described it as a motivation. It could be a problem. A need, a want is my summary here. And on the back of that, you're going to be doing a great job in finding out by asking great questions, lots of open questions, active listening, that consultative part of this process. And on the back of all of this, the best bit, the problem solving bit, you're going to make your offer. I talked before about we're not pitching and praying here. And the analogy I've loosely used earlier was about loading ammo into the gun so that I can fire my shots properly later. Well, I think that analogy holds pretty strong here, because this is not a scattergun thing. It's not where you list everything you bring to the table. And so many people get this bit wrong because they think that that's the best thing to do. Well, let me give you an example of where that's definitely not the case. If the landlord's property, or at least the landlord believes their property is in great condition, and you're offering some form of cosmetic refurbishment alongside your guaranteed rent and the hassle-free, hands-free maintenance management stuff, that's not going to land well. That's not something that they needed. And you will have found that through your questioning. So don't do that. Really, really important. Tie the offer back. And I mean that both in terms of the rental price, market rate or otherwise, the term that you're offering the landlord your services over. And then really, really important, I'm going to like a bit of a contract thing here. These could be your specially negotiated clauses. And it's really, really powerful because remember, we've got flexibility in our offer here. It's not set in stone, neither's the contract. And I'm not going to tell them that it's super flexible until I need to. But for the time being, if John's hydrangeas have got their own gardener that looks after them and it's his pride and joy or whatever it is, I already know that, then that would form part of my offer. So once you've identified needs and wants, you've asked great questions, you make your offer and tie it back to the stuff that you know. So you've asked great questions, you've framed the pitch, you've made your offer, following all the advice I've already given you. There's 3 outcomes at that stage. It could be a yes, it could be a maybe, it could be a no. And generally I say a maybe is a polite way of saying no. But there's a strategy you can use regardless of the outcome at this stage that will give you a shot at increasing the likelihood of you closing the deal, even if it's a no. So hear me out. I actually call this the Colombo. The reason is it's based on an American detective series from the 70s and 80s where cigar in hand, often the detective would turn his back before doing a bit of a switch and jumping back into a conversation. So let me show you how that can work for us. We've got you and we've got the landlord. And as you're leaving, literally, you could even be outside the property at this stage. So you've gone and you've left here. Really, really powerful, whether you've heard a yes, a maybe, or a no, is to turn as though you're leaving and the conversation's over. And what happens is the landlord, the prospect in this stage, they feel like you're getting out of their hair. You could even say that just before I get out of your hair. That's an actual line you can use. Shoulders drop, the conversation becomes a bit more relaxed. They think you're leaving. And Colombo used to do this with suspects. Having turned your back, you come back into the conversation to get more clarity. And it allows you to jump back into the situation. Really, really important here, because if you get this right, a yes allows you to jump back into more clarity. It allows you to go for no, is what we call it. So whether they said yes to the rent and term, you want to make sure, because if it didn't land right and you don't go for no, you will get ghosted. There's previous videos that go into more detail on that. But I like to go for round 2 here because it just helps make sure. Now, let's say that it was a maybe. They're unsure. Totally reasonable. But you're going to get more clarity now the shoulder's been relaxed and the situation's diffused, way less tense, to go one layer deeper and double down on, was it about the rent? Was it the term? Was it your hydrangeas? What about this? What about that? And it gives your maybe an opportunity for clarity. Because if you were going to send over information anyway, I'd rather know exactly what to send. And this strategy gives you the opportunity to fine-tune what that might look like. Let's say it was a flat-out no. Maybe they've been burned before. Maybe it's just not right. And it isn't for all landlords. I'm not suggesting that it is. But you've got to play the game to win. And you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So even if it's a no, having turned your back and come back into the conversation, you could even get a temperature gauge at that stage. So, John, totally understand that the model's not right for you today. Just out of curiosity, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being, this is not right for me because I've been burned before, and 10 being, I totally don't understand the scenario that you've described to me, for example, you're going to get more clarity. And as long as you've said yes, and they understand the dollar signs, the $2,500 a month rent that you're offering with all the following services, that will stick in their minds. And that extra clarity you get might just enable you to jump back into a conversation, even at a later date, to revisit.
I hope you're getting massive value from this video. Just a quick announcement to let you know we are now doing live rent-to-rent discovery days where we get off the screen and into a real room with real people to build a real rent-to-rent roadmap. If that sounds good, hit the link below this video to find out the next event.
The Colombo, super useful, regardless of the yes, no, maybe situation. There's another one you can use, and I think you're going to like this one as well. And this isn't my idea entirely, don't worry, although I do claim the Colombo. But this is called the AB. I mentioned temperature gauge just now as well, and it works in a really, really similar way. But I just want to give you options because they can be really, really powerful. And you're going to shoot your shot with this A-B gold star strategy, because once the rent-to-renter, in this case, has deployed it, what you'll find is that the landlord can be positioned to answer a question that you've predetermined. That's going to give us clarity on why the landlord is in the emotional or it's a turmoil that they might be experiencing. So rent-to-renter here, landlord here. The way it works is, whether you decide to employ the Colombo method or not, when looking for more clarity, if you've predetermined a question like, on the back of a no from a landlord, and I want to go one layer deeper into why and try and solve that objection, because remember, a no could be a smokescreen, and I want to find out the real reason. I might say, John, just before I get out of your hair, quick question, just for clarity. Is it that you're you wouldn't say the A there, but is it that you've heard this model before and you're not entirely sure how it works? Or is it that you've been burned before? And because I've got answers to those questions already pre-prepped, and I've picked a good sequence of questions there, then that's a question that wouldn't otherwise have been asked if I just left with the no, having even made my pitch. And once I can get clarity, you can do the 3 layers deeper on those questions as well. And in doing so, it will even allow you to turn a no into a maybe, and that enables the conversation to progress further and eventually could be your next deal.